What is up, my unapologetic nerds? We are back with another episode of the Unapologetic Anthropologist. This episode, we are switching gears a little bit. If you've been following me for a while now, you know that we were starting off kind of debunking some myths and some common folklore, but we are totally switching directions now and going into the evolution of our species. I will say this is a special sweet spot for me, so let's just jump right in. Now, I know we said we're done with myths and we're debunking other things now, but I wanted to put this into perspective for us. The myth here is that there's a straight line of evolution. You'll see this image everywhere to the left here, directly from monkeys to man. And that's not exactly true. The reality here is that our family tree is quite messy. We're going to dive into that tree in this episode a little bit, but it is much more complex. There's lots of cousins and different things that are not accounted for in that straight line picture that you will see pretty common. T-shirts, mugs, if you Google anthropology merch, you'll find that everywhere. But the reality is, we have lots of relatives. Many of them are extinct. And the magic, mystery, if you want to call it, the miracle is our species, Homo sapiens, we are the only lasting survivor out of this line here. So let's keep digging into our lineage just a little bit. Alrighty, meet the family. Let's dive into kind of the beginning of our evolution here and our matrix splitting off from our ape family here. We are indeed primates as humans. We are part of the great ape family, genetically speaking, and our closest cousins are going to be the chimpanzees and the bonobos that you see there to your bottom left. Really holds a special place in my heart as far as research is concerned. I took the fall of last year, I took a phenomenal human nature class taught by Professor Henrik over at the Harvard Extension School, and it was absolutely phenomenal. If you are curious about this, I definitely implore you to do some research on the differences between chimpanzees and bonobos and how that might actually affect our society. But humans are descendants from chimpanzees not any more than your descendants from your actual human cousins. Genetically speaking, we are that close. On a different episode, we will cover genetics, but I want to just really paint this picture for you here. So, about 10 to 12 million years ago, we see the branching of the great ape family really evolve from gorillas. Now you're adding some of these subspecies of apes, chimpanzees, bonobos. And then, right about between 6 and 8 million years ago, is where the hominids, our section of the cousins, if you will, have split from these primates. Let's keep going. So throughout this episode, as we continue, I really want to hone in on this timeline you see at the top here, this by millions of years. So we're really in between the 7 and 6 million years ago time frame, which is what the MYA stands for, million years ago. If you see KYA, that's 1,000 years ago. We're just shortening a little bit here. And of course, on our left-hand side here, we have our earliest known hominids. And then we have some evolution kicking in, some tree climbing, some bipedalism, some early walkers where we're evolving from that chimp-like state on all fours and standing fully upright. A lot of the mystery here and some proposed reasonings for this is energy efficiency, carrying food, maybe some hunting strategies like looking for predators or prey, and then, of course, thermoregulation, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this podcast. But I just want to point out the overall expansion of this timeline. We're talking in millions of years ago. So that really just has to instill some sort of proud feeling, that we're still here. It took all of this evolution, all of these species, all of these cousins to allow us to be here today. Moving just a hair up, and when I say a hair, now we're talking between 3 and 4 million years ago. Of course, we already talked about the bipedalism, fully walking upright. But I also want to just point out how that correlates with brain size, because we think, humans are so great, our brains are so powerful. But the reality is there was actually at one point in time a de-evolution or a halt in evolution where our brain size and the size of our head in general actually stopped expanding compared to some of our cousins. That all has to do with the laboring and birth of how we reproduce. If the brain and skull was any bigger, we could not actually push out our babies. So, kind of a little evolutionary sandwich there of yes, we're still evolving, but natural selection is still looking out for our reproduction as well. Everybody knows about Lucy. It is a very famous discovery, so I implore you to do some research there because there is tons of information about that particular archaeological finding. And remember, we stood up before our brains expand. So we've got some evolutionary timeline here too of what came first. Legs changed before the heads did because it has drastically less impact on the birthing process. If that makes sense, let's just keep going. Moving forward in our timeline, that timeline is still on the very top of our page here. We meet Homo habilis, the handyman. We're thinking tools. We're walking upright. And notice at the bottom here, we haven't gotten to fire or the enlargement of our brains. We're still in this pre evolved period. We're walking upright, we're using tools, but we're not modern humans yet. We have larger brains, we're consuming more meat. All of these are changing our genetics. All of these are changing our human body. We're talking millions of years ago. If you're conditioning something for millions of years, it's probably going to change at one point in time. And then, of course, we see the first major technological revolution. Now, of course, this is all on archaeological data, things we've dug up, things we've found from the past. So there could potentially be tool use before this, but this is really the major revolution that we see in our timeline. And I know as scientists, we are not supposed to have favorites, but if I had one, it would definitely be Homo erectus, the trailblazers. And for me, this is why. Notice at the bottom our tracker. We now have fire, and not only do we have fire, we have the capability to control the fire, which really impacts our life, how we eat, our safety. And now that we have some control over that, we can now migrate to different areas. That to me is so massive in our human story. We've left our origin and we're now out discovering the rest of the what we now know world. And I can't imagine how terrifying that was, all the change that comes with that. We really have to give a round of applause here to Homo erectus for expanding our species and allowing this expansion and migration to happen. We do see some more modern body proportion, and this remains long distance walking. And for nearly 2 million years, Homo erectus was arguably the most successful human species that had ever lived up until this point. Notice again, right before we move on, our timeline at the top. We're closing in on what we'll consider the modern era, but we're still really close to those previous ancestors. So you have a mix of species that are living amongst each other, and Homo erectus becomes the very first to migrate out of Africa. And like I said before, we were not alone. We were simultaneously on the earth with other human species, our cousins, if you will. So we have a little tiny dot at the top that says you are here in between that 60 and 40,000 years ago range. That's our Homo erectus, is where we're kind of talking about. But I really wanted to put this in perspective because we have lots of different cousin species. We have lots of DNA roaming the earth at this point. The Neanderthals, the Desovians, all the way down to eventually us, the Homo sapiens. All of this interbreeding DNA combination lives in us today and actually paved the way for us to be here in the first place. It's pretty remarkable when you think of what it all took and all the lives that were lived for us to be where we are today in modern human history. That brings us, the Homo sapiens. So you see that you are here now. We are in our realm of time, emerging in Africa, still emerging in Africa, which is amazing, around 300,000 years ago. And we label this as the cognitive revolution. Now, mind you, Neanderthals Desovians, Homo erectus, we're not dumb or unintelligent in any fashion, okay? But now we're going to see symbolic thinking, language, art, trade. Now we're so socially connected with our cousins and now expanding the world where we're not using some of these cognitive abilities in a different fashion. We're going to talk a little bit about those cognitive skills and those things, especially during our upbringing in a future episode. But I just want to point out the fact that just because we're calling it the cognitive revolution does not mean we were significantly smarter than those who came before us. It's just what we find in the evidence of really the social side of us, not the biology, but the social side of us really taking off. The debate here is, was this sudden or was this gradual? Did this build to the empire that we now live in today? Let me know what you think in the comments. Alrighty, and that brings us to our modern times. And why is any of this even important? Like, why would any of this even be relevant today? It's because evolution hasn't stopped. Natural selection, all of these things that I've talked about today have not stopped at all. They're just the new frontier. We have culture, we have technology, even the biological evolution hasn't stopped. You know, at a certain point in time, we see a lactose tolerant and alcohol tolerance, altitude adaptation, disease resistance. Now we're even seeing the emergence of diseases coming back, some mental health illnesses that we don't see in antiquity. So evolution hasn't stopped. It is extremely important for us to consider not only our biology, but our environment and culture as well, and how that's all impacting our evolution. So, my question for you is, has culture become humanity's newest evolutionary force in comparison to biological things, external forces, hunting for certain things, natural disasters, ice ages, things like that? Has culture replaced that for us as our new evolutionary force? Medicine, globalization, now we're even gene editing. Cannot imagine how that's going to affect us 1,000 years, 10,000, etc. from now. Just want to put that into perspective. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I definitely want to hear other perspectives on how this is hitting you. And of course, to wrap up here, our full view of our timeline here. Our ape family, all of our cousins, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, all the way leading to us. Not a march towards perfection, but rather a gradual change over millions and millions and millions of years. A story of survival, adaptation, and constant change. Many branches with ultimately one direct survivor. Of course, we still have chimps and apes and monkeys and everything today, but you don't see a lot of Neanderthals, Homo habilis, Homo erectus walking around. It's us. The echoes of all of our ancient relatives live with inside our DNA today. And that does it for another episode of the Unapologetic Anthropologist. Remember to be kind to each other in the discussions in the comments below. Listen, like, share, subscribe, share with your friends. And in the meantime, stay curious and unapologetic. I'll see you on our next episode.